This struggle feels so lonely, so isolated, so cut off that parents often wonder if anyone can possibly understand this nightmare that they're going through. If anyone can sympathize or empathize or even help. Can we talk about that this week? Throughout our history, humans have always swung like a pendulum from one extreme to the other. You see it in our politics, you see it in many different things. If you talk to people, they will tell you that 20% are on this extreme, 20% are on this extreme, 60% are in the middle. May be true at any given time, but as humans, we gravitate naturally towards the extreme. Very few of us stay in the middle. For example, we swing between individualism and how similar we are to everyone else, how much we have in common, and how unique an individual that we are. I'll give you an example. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote a series of books designed to help people deal with death, dying, and the grieving process. One of them, How We Die, identified 5 stages of grief that people go through. Back in the extreme to center of how much we have in common, the books were well received. As the pendulum continued to swing to the extreme of individualism, they came under fire. The individualists erected a straw man argument that said that her book said everyone goes through all 5 stages the exact same way. If you ever bother to read Elizabeth Kubler-Ross' book on How We Die, you'll quickly discover that is not what she said, but that was a straw man argument used to emphasize individualism and uniqueness and to discredit her books. That's how we swing back and forth. In my experience, we're more in the center, which aligns with Christianity. We're unique individuals with an awful lot in common. Scripture tells us not to count it strange or to act like this has never happened to someone else. We have so much in common, but we're each unique individuals at the same time. Does that make sense? Our pendulum has swung so far to the individual and so far away from emphasizing how much we have in common that if you go anywhere for help, you're probably not going to find it. You're instead going to be confronted with how unique you are, how everyone's grief is unique, how everyone's problems are unique, how your road to healing is unique. You're going to be confronted time and time and time again with how unique, how special you are. Do you see the problem, though? If everyone's road is unique, if everyone's path is unique, if everyone's suffering is unique, if you are completely unique, then no one can understand. If no one can understand, no one can help. But in my experience, that's not what I found. I found that, yes, we are individuals, but we have an awful lot in common with everybody else. So we can turn to people for advice. We can ask their experiences. We can look at it, all of that, and say, there's probably 99% that can help. Let's look at our life and weed out the part that can't. And that's a premise for the books too, by the way. But that's also what Scripture tells us. It says that the wise person seeks advice from people that can be trusted, people with experience. The fool relies on their own counsel and their own understanding. So, given that pendulum, I think we're right about here. But let's look at this more closely, shall we? There's 43 million adolescents in the United States, according to the 2020 Census Bureau. Current estimates from the National Institute of Drug Abuse is 8 million of those 43 million struggle with addiction. That's 1 out of every 5. Do the math. It's 1 out of every 5 adolescents struggle with an addiction. If there's 1 out of every 5 adolescents struggling with an addiction, do you really think that there's no parent out there who can understand? No parent whose 13-year-old daughter became addicted like yours did? No parent whose 15-year-old son overdosed and nearly died from heroin like yours did? I don't think so. No parent that loves their child as much as you do. No parent that's been through the similar stuff that you've been through. NIDA also tells us that about 26 million adults struggle with addiction. Do you really think if there's 26 million adults struggling with addiction, and we recognize that most of them have parents, that none of those parents love their child as much as you love yours? Finally, consider this. A 2017 Pew survey revealed that over 40% of all Americans have family members who are addicted. Family members or significant others who are addicted. I think there's an awful lot of people that can empathize, that can understand what you're going through. At the same token, let's be real, there's an awful lot of mean people out there. There's an awful lot of people out there who I would not trust as far as I could throw. So you can't just walk up to anyone and say, here's what I'm going through. Are you going through this also? You have to be discerning. And finding those people, being discerning, is going to be a topic for a different video. In the meantime, please be assured there are people that can help. There are people that can emphasize. There are people that can empathize. There are people that can understand what you're going through. You don't have to go through this alone.